the Bain Free Radio Hour.
Hello and welcome to the Bain Free Radio Hour. This week, Hailey, H.Y. Gregor, interviews Joelle Presby about her latest Bain novel, Ringer. And later, we continue with part 38 of One Jump Ahead by Mark L. Van Name.
All right, everybody. Hi again. Thank you so much for joining us in another episode of the Bain Free Radio Hour. For those of you who don't know me or forgot, I'm your host today, Hailey H.Y. Gregor, and I have the distinct pleasure of bringing you guys Joelle Presby. So her latest, greatest release here from Bain is Ringer, which came out on November 4th. And when you look up Ms. Presby here online, her bio, there we go, yes, and we will have it hovering too. Her latest, again, sorry, November 4th. And your biography, when you look it up, is very short. Would you introduce yourself? Give us a background on you.
Okay, so I was born in France. Actually, I really was. But then I was raised in West Africa, which inspired some of the background for Dabre Snake Launcher and some of the character tribal interactions for Ringer. And then my parents, I'm American. My parents moved back to the United States. I finished school, went to the Naval Academy, served in the Navy for a while, studied at Naval Postgraduate School how to find and kill submarines. So, of course, I also met a submarine officer and started dating him and
did not kill
married this guy.
Did not kill.
Yes, I'm not a Black Widow. I'm not one of those authors. I did the Navy nuclear power track and then as an officer, and so you study engineering, electrical, mechanical, nuclear, various ways of pledging them all together, which is not quite as useful for a science fiction writer as if maybe you studied spacecraft engineering. So Andy?
Yeah, I'm Andy Presby. I'm the official author support husband. I'm not a writer, but I do help with the world building. So I was a submarine officer, as Joelle said. I did 22 years in the Navy. During that time, I got a degree in spacecraft engineering from the Naval Postgraduate School. And now I work in the space industry. My day job is advanced propulsion systems, kind of like the impulse drive on Star Trek ships. I work in nuclear propulsion and power systems. And so that kind of puts me in a nice space to be able to help when you want to make realistic, futuristic, but realistic spacecraft. So that's kind of how I help.
Excellent. Well, I'm happy to have you here. We have a surprise guest. All right. So first things first, since this is is it fair to say this is a spin-off from your last book that came out with Bain? Is that how you would describe it?
Well, I've been thinking of it as the Dabre Snake Launcher is book 0, and this is book 1.
Got you. Okay. So could you ground us?
They're definitely connected. If you're looking to avoid spoilers, this is a book that has a prologue, and you can skip prologues if you want to. The prologue has spoilers for Dabre Snake Launcher.
Got you. Okay.
So
I did read the prologue.
If you're going to read them out of order, you want to skip the prologue and Ringer.
Okay. So could you ground us a little bit in how they're related?
How are they related? The Ringer is set primarily in the rings of Saturn, and Dabre Snake Launcher is set primarily on Earth. They're in the same story universe. Things that would be spoilers that occurred in the Dabre Snake Launcher are necessary for humanity to be where it is in Ringer.
But it's worth noting, Ringer is a good number of generations down the line from Dabre.
Well, depends on generations.
True, but it's some time has passed.
I love the depends how you count generations thing, because there's some interesting points to that you make in the book, right? About genetics and embryos and certain things like that, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about the politics of the universe, or do you want to go straight into world building and development stuff? What are you most excited about right now to talk about?
Let's see. Let's talk a little bit about genetics,
because
it's the one not as certain hard science fiction thing in Ringer, similar to how Dabare had carbon nanofiber that could be whatever length you want, and now we can for sure make them about 9 centimeters or about a half meter, depending on which research report you believe is true. Because the science people declare that they can do things and somebody else tries to repeat it and they can't do it, and they say, you can't really do that, you faked it, and they say, no, actually this is proprietary. So as somebody who's just reading the reports, I'm not quite sure what's going on. For Ringer, one of the premises is that before we meet our heroes, people have gone to Saturn and established space stations, multiple. There are spacecraft that go around between the space stations. There's a whole small civilization out there. And part of getting there was that it was risky, and depending on sales, maybe one day I'll write a prequel that's like book 1.5 about how that specific transition happened. But to encourage people to be part of the crew to go out there when space is ugly and has lots of risks, people made frozen embryos before they went, and they put those frozen embryos in the most secure part of the ship with low radiation and lots of shielding around it, to kind of guarantee that even if they didn't make it, their offspring would, and would have the benefit as long as the crew in general was successful. But then people don't, just like now when people do IVF, people don't always gestate everyone. But because of the way they set things up, in this case, everyone does eventually get gestated. And so there's a lot of issues about how inheritance works then with people who may be born a lot after their original parents have passed. And that's the thing, that can a frozen embryo really survive that long? Right now, I think 62 years was the longest that I saw claimed for a successful embryo, and it wasn't human. So can people last that long? Would we even allow anybody to test it based on, or would it be ethical to test it? I don't know. But this is science fiction, so we can hand wave
away certain problems,
and we can examine what would happen. What's the weird results of this?
And we really like asking what if, right? And so I think it's cool to, based on kind of our biographies and where we came from and what we know and what we don't, we like asking, hey, it looks like we could really do this one day. What if? What would that be like? How would we live? What would people be like? The way when people ask me, well, what's your wife write about? She writes about checking in on our great grandchildren. Right? It's like, well, how are the great grandkids getting along? And that's kind of how I approach sci-fi. I always have, so it's fun.
So you guys think in that many generations we'll have space stations on Saturn? Those four greats, five.
Saturn compared to the other options.
Yeah.
It kind of, in my opinion, it depends on how many people are out in space. If it's as widely populated as it is in Ringer, then yeah, of course people will go to Saturn. But if it's maybe a tenth, maybe people will only be around cislunar space here, right next to Earth, with a little bit, maybe primarily just research and not really families living outside of Mars.
It's worth noting that from a world building perspective, there's always layers to Joelle's books. There's like the character layer and the plot layer and the geopolitical layer, and then there's like the civilization layer. Mm-hmm. For the civilization layer of Dabare, part of the reason we started where we did is because the plot events of Dabare sort of explain how this civilization on Earth was able to be like, no, we're moving into space in a big way. And it's not like everybody's moving off the Earth, but we're gonna we got serious big stuff we want to do in space. This is how we're gonna do it. And the plot of Dabare is about helping to make that happen. Ringer assumes, to actually kind of as a kind of another perspective on your question, this sort of Ringer assumes, part of the backstory we assume for Ringer is that there's folks, like there have been folks in the history of the United States and other countries, where the reason they came was, man, the old country's not looking as good as it used to. I want to try something new. And whether that's because you want to just make like you think the streets are paved with gold and you want to go make money, which, as later books will show, turned out to be true for the people who live at Saturn, or you're just like, man, I'm not sure. I'm not sure my kind of people are welcome here anymore. I'd like a little bit more space to try to do it. Or whether it's just like, hey, I want to do my own thing and start this. Like, I want to base a civilization on Greco-Roman, political theory with elements of mob rule. Okay, sure, dude, whatever. You can go try that out at the Rings of Saturn, and like you're not messing with anybody, and you're not stealing anybody else's cheese. So there's all sorts of reasons why the people in this book went, and that kind of covers, I think, all of them. So yeah, I think you could, assuming you get some of the technical goodies we gave them in the first book and in between.
So why did you choose Saturn for the setting of this book?
It seemed like it hadn't been used a lot. And so we had, well, the big one is Cassini. There have been only 4 spacecraft that have taken a lot of pictures of Saturn, and the first 3 were just flybys. So we've got Pioneer 2 back in 79, we got Voyager 1 in 80, and Voyager 2 in 81. And then Cassini, instead of just going out of the system and taking some pictures of Saturn when they were closest to it, Cassini went and orbited Saturn for 13 years and took a ton of photos, and then eventually deorbited into Saturn, taking photos for as long as it could transmit them back, or maybe after that it still took photos. We probably still took photos. And then it melted, or whatever it did. Then Cassini was 2004 to 2017. So that's more recent data about what it's actually like out there.
And for me, like in college, NASA sent one of those Galileo around Jupiter, and I was reading the papers and I fell in love with Jupiter. And then NASA sent one, like basically every time NASA sends one to a planet, I fall in love with that planet. And I read the science papers for fun. But the thing that struck me about Saturn was, man, those rings are gorgeous. They're amazing. They're really, really weird, dude. They're just strange. Like in Empire Strikes Back, where the Millennium Falcon's dodging between all those asteroids, it's kind of your Hollywood asteroid field. Those don't really exist many places, we think. There's just not there's way more space and way fewer rocks. Well, Saturn's rings are even denser than that, and they're very, very thin. They're like 100,000 kilometers wide and like 30 feet or like 100 feet tall. They're that flat and they're that thin and they're just odd. And the more I read the papers, the more I realized, wait, wow, like if you really wanted to get away from it all, like you were a pilgrim, right? You built the Mayflower and you were like, man, I'm not liking Earth. Like it's just like the regime's repressive, or the tech bros took over, or I don't know, pick your poison, right? For Ben Bova, it was religious fundamentalists took over the Earth. Whatever it is, if you want to get out of Dodge, but you can't quite make it to Alpha Centauri, you can't quite go to another star, man, Saturn's a gas giant. It's got radiation belts. It's not easy to visit. They're not as bad as Jupiter's, but it's got some radiation belts. But the rings, it's like being in low Earth orbit. The rings and Saturn's rings suck up all that radiation. You're good to go. It's almost, depending on the measurements, it looks like it's almost, from a radiation perspective, easier to live in Saturn's rings than it is to live in Earth orbit. And you're surrounded by water. So if you have enough energy and your recycling is good enough, the rings are basically 99% water and 1% carbon compounds. That's the basic building blocks of what you need to sustain an ecology. You need other things. Those things you're going to have to import, maybe from Titan, maybe from your friends in the asteroid belt, which is why asteroid belt families are really important in this book. But that's kind of why Saturn, for me, from sort of a techno world building perspective, it's a nice place to go if you don't want to be bothered, but you want to be really wealthy.
A thing that I enjoyed about the way the belts relate to the rings of Saturn is I've got a main character who's who has a friend who's basically on Saturn to do driver's ed. So Xavier's family owns a big chunk of the belt and also some Jovian asteroids, and they are a mining superpower. But he is living with a guardian for years in Saturn so that he can practice driving in and out of the rings, so that he's going to be a hotshot pilot by the time he goes back to go deal with regular asteroids who are far apart and will never be as dangerous as trying to go through the ring wall.
Yeah, the tagline in the book is if you can handle a spacecraft in Saturn's rings, you can handle a spacecraft anywhere.
Okay, so that brings me to, since we're going to talk about Xavier, we were talking a little bit about genetics and embryos, adaptations to living in space. Tell me about Xavier's family and what's unique about him.
So
it was a surprise to me.
Xavier has genetic dwarfism. That's a thing that happens on Earth. There's a group in southern Cameroon where most of the people in the tribe have genetic dwarfism. On Earth, genetic dwarfism is not a great advantage. In general, women want to marry people who are taller than them. If you're a dwarf, that maybe is not so great for your dating prospects. However, if you're in a space-based society, being low mass, even if you have a lot of energy to use for your spacecraft, is of significant value. The lighter you are, as long as you're a grown adult with developed brain capacity, the better as far as operating a spacecraft. And yes, there are in general a lot of comorbidities, if you will, things that you might be more inclined to have a heart attack, or you might be more inclined to have cancer if you have genetic dwarfism. Those things might go together. But wealth solves a lot of problems. And so if there is a big advantage to having a certain attribute and it also makes you rich, then you can probably, as a group, become quite influential. And so part of my main character, Callie's family, is they're a little taller, in some cases a lot taller than the average spacer on the station. And they can kind of get away with the disadvantage of being tall because they're rich. Well, Xavier is considered gorgeous because he's quite short, and he has genetic dwarfism, so he's going to maintain being short. He's got a constant childhood stressor of wanting to not grow too much, because what if he ends up being tall for someone with genetic dwarfism? His family's going to rag on him when he goes back home.
And the thing I loved about that is it lets her subvert expectations. It's kind of one of the themes, or one of the kind of things we're playing around with Ringer is, okay, we go to space, everybody gets to go. There's 10 billion everybody's. What weird, what's that look like? And not just I love Star Trek, right? Obviously, but not just okay, what's the United States look like in space? Cool, fine, great, love it. It's not like I don't like the United States. But we've seen that a lot. And so it's okay, what kind of weird cultures are these people going to do when they can do that? And what kind of things are going to be different about this environment than are different in other environments? It's worth noting from a technical perspective, Xavier's family, when they got into the business, propulsion and power, it's always good to be low mass on spaceships. It's always going to be good to be low mass on spaceships. It's worth noting that as the technology progressed, it became less and less important for them to be small, and there's culturally, it became a cultural thing more than it was an absolute hard requirement to live in their society, because as they got rich, they got better spaceships.
So you to build this little futuristic cultural microcosm.
Yeah, and that one that changes over time in a way that kind of if you're reading it and you're also reading the science literature and the engineering literature about what we think we can really do, it sort of shows you how this is how it might, not just how it's a static point in time, but this is how it might develop. This is how they're coping with technical change, and this is how they're coping with cultural change too.
So then in the book, there are a lot of little things that are touched on either incidentally because they're a really natural part of the world that, Calypso is living in, or you go into a little bit more detail as far as life in space. you're dealing with, the radiation, interstellar travel, sourcing food. You talk about metal scarcity. How did you go about developing that or deciding what would or wouldn't be issues for them living on Shaula?
Is that me?
Yeah, I think you should
That's
answer
me.
that question.
Okay.
Like I said, I read planetary science stuff for fun, and a good part of sort of both my hobby thinking and my for fun thinking and my day job is just sort of imagining how the technologies that I work on day to day and the teams I lead, how those things are going to be used by people. Because it does, like, you can develop all the technology you want, but if I'm sitting here leading teams of brilliant engineers developing a technology no one is ever going to use, that's sort of a waste of everybody's time and money. And so we never want to do that. And so it involves thinking a lot sort of outside the box and like, okay, what do I want the grandkids to be able to do? And so working on sci-fi is just like an extension of that process farther into the future, right? And it's fun because I get to sort of take some of the binders off that really restrict us day to day in my real day job. So it's really relaxing for me. But the way I do that is there's a lot of people out there now, have been for 60 years, talking about how you farm in space, how could you live there? Where do you find metal? Where do you find stuff? Now, a lot of that is concentrated closer to the Earth. But taking that literature, reading it, digesting it, sort of understanding, okay, this is how we might do it on the moon. This is how we could do it on Mars. Now I get to apply my imagination. It's like, okay, they're stuck in Saturn's rings. What do they do? What are they missing? Metals is a big thing, right? There are metals in the Saturn system, but they're buried in the middle of big moons. Like they're in the core of the moon because the outer structure of all of Saturn's moons is miles and miles and miles of ice, just water, ice, and other kind of ice, right? So that's great. You got water, but getting at metals out there like means, okay, I've got to go through 3 miles of solid ice and then 30 miles of ocean. Ooh, that's hard. Maybe my friends in the asteroid belt who can just like vacuum metal shavings off the surface of an asteroid can ship some of that out to me, and I'll trade them for some other stuff, right? Not really explicitly said in the story, the basis of Saturn's economy is nuclear fusion, and they're using helium-3 and deuterium from Saturn's moons and from Saturn's atmosphere. Inverted, helium-3 mostly comes from Saturn's atmosphere. And they're using that to kind of fuel their society because solar doesn't work as well that far out from the sun. But putting all that together leads you to like, ooh, man, if metals are this hard to come by, they're really going to be good at recycling. And one of the things that kind of gets me excited about my day job is I don't care who you are. I don't care where you fall on the socio-political spectrum or what you think the problems in the day-to-day world are. I think space can help you solve some of those problems. And one of the ways it can do that is a lot of recycling technology. I think developing the technology to live and work in space is going to really push recycling because it's really important. It's really important in space. So if you're a big believer in that, I got a space station I want to sell you.
So Joelle, what was the most, pardon?
Hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah. I was going to say, so how did you, working in tandem, take this kind of info from Andy and then digest it and do your own research on top of that and then turn it into something where it is a book that someone like me, who is not very technically inclined, can read it and understand it and go, this is awesome. What did that alchemy look like? Can
I tell them what didn't work?
Okay.
Here's what doesn't work. When you want to write a 100,000 word novel and your co-author, your world builder, thinks he's going to write a 100,000 word tech Bible that's just going to explain everything to you in plain prose with some pretty pictures. Yeah, that didn't work. He couldn't really do that very well. That didn't.
There was a lot of back and forth. I had an outline, and we would, in order to make not every date night turn into work night, we would have separate dates to work on the novel.
Yeah. Our babysitters loved it because they basically got paid twice. They got a lot of business.
Yeah. And in some cases, I'd come up with, here's what I'm going to do in the story, and he'd come up with that doesn't work for these reasons. Can you do these other things instead? In some cases, he'd come up with, here's this cool thing I found. Is it any good for you? Can you use this shiny thing? And so it was coming at it from both sides. My favorite bits were in the final push to finish off the draft before turning it into Bane for the first time. Before edits and revisions, we were driving to Liberty. Well, Andy was driving to Liberty Con, and I read the entire draft to him and was taking notes as he was kind of having bright ideas, because it wasn't too late to have a better idea. And then I think we got there either Tuesday or Wednesday before the con started.
Started on Thursday, I think.
And I spent up until opening ceremonies pretty much closeted in the room, putting in the better ideas that we'd had along the way, and press send, so that when I next saw in person Toni Weisskopf and she asked, have you sent it to me yet? I could say, it's in your email.
Yes.
Yes.
Just now.
That was a push. Yeah. I can write, but I'm not a prose writer. Like, I don't write story. I write other things. And so all the writing I did on this was just like, hey, here's a scene outline. Like, this is how sequentially the actions to make this highly technical thing would work. And then because she understands the underlying technology, I don't have to explain it to her mostly. She can be like, okay, now let's put this through the story converter and make it actually readable and not Andy's text spew.
And dumb it down so I can understand it, because
it's not necessarily dumbed down. It's just so that people get it. So I, like everybody who's a submariner or on an aircraft carrier that's nuclear powered, I went to Naval Postgraduates. I went to nuclear power school. And one of my proudest moments was after we'd completed one of the major tests that involved a whole lot of memorization. The fellow student who consistently had the top score in the whole class had once again gotten the top score on that test and brought in donuts the next day, as is the tradition. You buy donuts for the whole class if you got the top score. And she sits down with her donut and has a list of questions she wants me to explain why things work the way they are. She's memorized them all. She got a better score than I did, and she's having me explain why. And it's like, oh, I know stuff.
I'm useful.
I don't have it memorized as well as these other people because it's hard and there's a ton to memorize, but I'm useful.
But I don't think she's dumbing it down. It's just like, when you're driving to your car, do you think about how the internal combustion engine works? This is one of the weird tensions in hard sci-fi where it's like, it's almost like old, like 17th or 18th century travel fiction where you're never going to go to Botswana. So somebody writes a novel about Botswana and there's kind of a story in there, but mostly it's about cool descriptions of Botswana. And I don't even know when Botswana became a country. I'm sorry, anybody from Botswana who's listening. I'm really sorry. But so like with hard sci-fi, it's like going to a travel visit in the future, but you also need a story in there. And guys like me, like, we want to know, like, how did you guys make the nuclear fusion pulse rocket work? And yet, day to day, nobody thinks about that. When I was operating my submarine, I knew, but I wasn't thinking about how the nuclear reactor worked.
Yeah, I've got to explain in the story early enough so that you know that if a drive is down, or, if you're driving your car and the little fuel needle is pointing at E, you know as a reader that is a problem without me explaining at that point that gases run on fuel and that E means empty. We need to have mentioned that earlier in a way that stuck into your brain but didn't distract from the general flow of the story earlier, so that you can know that the bad guys are chasing you and you're almost out of gas and you're going to have, a shootout at the gas station.
And that's one thing we did.
It's not because the character is stupid to not just keep going, even though it's on me.
And one thing we did do to kind of return to your previous question about how we meshed, one thing I did do really early on when we said, okay, look, you're not writing a 100,000 word tech Bible before this thing is done. So just sit down and look at the plot and let's go write a book. One of the things I did was I made a list. It's like 4 pages long. Okay, what does the poor reader need to know in order to understand the climax, in order to understand all the different try-fail cycles leading up to the climax? Like, what does the reader need to know? Okay, when in the book can I teach them that most organically without, like, as you know, Bob, without doing that sideline thing that sometimes happens? It sort of pulls the reader out of the flow. And maybe Joelle would really rather be talking about character at that point, but she's got to talk about world building. So I try to put all those things and layer them into the cake so it's easier for the reader to learn the stuff they need to know to get the punch at the end.
I thought that it was really well done because knowing what I know about you, Joelle, when I went to go pick the book up, I was like, oh no, I might be about to read something that is way too advanced for me, like way over my head, because I don't have any of that same scientific background. And I thought it was beautifully done because it all came together really neatly. Especially because Calypso, your main character, is significantly younger.
Yes.
But she's also... Do we envision a world in which kids grow up and are a lot smarter, faster in the future? Is there reasoning behind that?
Yes and no.
That
Because she's so smart.
she is very smart, but there's a wide range of people that exist now. Some are much smarter than that.
There's a lot here.
I went while I lived in West Africa in Cameroon. I went to boarding school for elementary school. And there were some people in that boarding school who were extremely smart. Later on, as a college kid and in graduate school, I realized that many people see me as smart too. But early on, I did not see myself at all as smart because of these other people that I was around. The fellow Americans in boarding school, many of them were much smarter than I was. The people who were Cameroonians, who were local, most of them knew fluently at least 4 languages, and I struggled with 2 or 3. I come back to the United States, and the fact that I know bits of multiple languages seemed like a lot to people, but I didn't speak until I was 4. my family, my parents moved around, and I went to kind of daycare-like environments, and the main language of the daycare providers kept changing. So in my defense, it was not crazy that I didn't speak well until I was 4, but there are other people who have that kind of environment, and as 4-year-olds, they're fluent in 5 languages, and that was not where little Joelle was.
And for me, like living and working in submarine, like I'm a regular old boring American middle class person, right? My life story is not very interesting to other Americans because it's sort of bland. My folks mortgaged our house literally to send me to fancy private schools to get me the best chance at college I could get, and I was always average in this group of really smart people, and I thought of myself as average, and really, frankly, still do. People call me smart, and I'm like, who are you talking to? Because I don't think I am. I'm not fast on the uptake. It takes me lots of hard work and lots of slamming my face into the book to understand stuff. But I'm curious, and I like learning, and it's fun for me, so I do it a lot. And one of the things I learned in the submarine force is you can do anything as long as you're willing to work 10 times harder at it than anybody else. And so one of the things that struck me working in submarines was a very demanding technical environment, right? If you don't, and to this extent, there's a lot of reasons submarines are not like space. But to this extent, from a human factors perspective, submarines are very much like space because the environment wants to kill you in like a couple of minutes, right?
Yes.
And if you don't get it right, you and maybe a lot of other people are going to die. We had a saying, right? The ocean doesn't care if you thought you shut the hatch. The ocean just does not care. You might actually see that in Dabri. Some version of that in Dabri at some point. But like, one of the things that struck me is some of the guys I had who were operating nuclear reactors and people who were doing all these crazy, like they had music degrees. They were older than Callie is, But they had music degrees. Like, they didn't have any previous experience in this stuff, but you could teach them. And they really wanted to learn, because otherwise they'd die. And so, like, people who want to live that way, part of what we were saying with Dabre and Ringer in particular is, hey, like, part of the thing this culture is going to have to do is kids are going to have to learn at a pretty young age, don't mess with the plants. They're not just pretty. They're part of the life support system, and you're going to eat their fruit tomorrow, so you better not mess them up. That kind of stuff, right? And it's just, that's part of the weirdness of the new culture and the travel log aspect of it. But I think we all live in a technical society where we depend on that food truck coming into your grocery store, or we depend on the sewage system working. We depend on the electrical power. We're just sort of divorced. We can be divorced from it because we've got people for that. The folks in Ringer don't. They are the people for that.
Well, and you've got her, I mean, practicing ring diving, right? And working on her ship and everything at an age where we don't even trust kids in the United States to be having learner's permits on cars, right?
Yeah. Though I've got some, I guess, second cousins who have farmland, and as soon as a kid can touch the pedals, they'll drive a tractor.
They'll be able to drive a tractor.
Yeah, go nuts.
They're not on the open road, but and I'm pretty sure that they can still in Ohio get a driver's license at 14 as long as you can make the claim you need it for
farm work.
Really?
For farm work or to support a family member.
I think that's true. And
but then
cool.
Otherwise it's like 17 now. They raised it from when I was a kid and it was 16.
Oh, really? All right.
In Ringer, Callie, so one of the reasons that it's kind of cool to start with Callie being so young, and from the book's perspective is it's from her perspective. So, like, she's not always aware of the adult systems that her society has in place around her to take care of her. And the reason she's not aware of it is, so when I was in the Navy as a young officer on my submarine, I got a chance to do something really cool that I can't talk about, but it involved me. So the captain it's not like Captain Picard, where whenever anything's happening, Captain Picard's sitting in the chair giving orders. On the submarine, the captain, like, the dude's got to sleep, right? And so there's somebody standing watch, telling the ship where to go and what to do based on the captain's orders for long periods of time, so that the captain could go do other higher level planning things.
Or sleep.
And then, so I was in a place where we were doing something. It was cool. It was exciting. It was challenging. It's the reason I joined the Navy. A lot of fun. But it was a place where my captain might normally have, because I was pretty young, might normally have come out of his office and maybe not gone to sleep that day and watched me. And what he did instead was, I only found this out afterwards. He said, "Okay, Presby, I'm gonna hit the rack. I want at least 6 hours down. So you're in charge, brother. Go to sleep." Now, what I later learned was that there were people around me who had very distinct orders. Hey, don't trash Presby's because he's trying to grow your confidence, right? And that's really, really important. And the best way I know to grow confidence is success. It's feeling like you did it by yourself. And so he was trying to help me do that. But he had a network of folks around me who were like, "Hey, look, Presby's really struggling. Just contact me on the down low, and I'll wake up suddenly. I'll have insomnia or something, right?" And I really appreciated that, even now. Captain Mac, if you're listening, thanks. And I wanted to bring that sort of ancient wisdom, that sort of just very human, very basic, but very important kind of wisdom into their society and show, now, hey, man, like, we know how to do this. This isn't that hard. You just give the kid rope and let them go, but you give them away, but you make sure you've got a way to save them if they get themselves into real trouble. And if you read the book, you can sort of see the edges of how that would have worked, but, well, read the book.
Yeah, and
Go read the book. Everybody go read the book.
It's worth noting that in the first chapter, Callie does actually need some help.
There are some limits because this book is written only in first person. So Andy and I came up with all these details for the whys. And, well, it's in first person. So, the detailed background for who her tutor main instructor is and why anybody would trust him with 3 of the most promising kids on the whole station outside the ship, all in their own self-built spacecraft, which he, of course, would have gone over very carefully, but apparently he missed one key thing. And he's not immediately fired. Why not? I've got all of that, but you can only put so much in a book when you make it first person.
Well, and I think it's safe to say, like, you made the main. I mean, why did we make the young character? Why did we make the main character the age she is? Is that a good question? You're the host.
Yeah, go for it.
You want
I'm here to talk about what you want to talk about. It's Joelle's show.
I don't know another podcast. I want to hear your take, and then I'll.
So for me, there's a couple reasons. I think Joelle was like, "Oh, and I want to make it first person, and I want the main character to be like, 12. I want her to be 12." I was like, "You want me to explain astrodynamics from a 12-year-old's perspective? I hate you." And she's like, no, it'll be fine. And for me, and as we gradually did it, I realized, no, this is brilliant. This is awesome. So first of all, in the first place, I'm like, as a young man, I would have eaten this book up. This book is awesome because it's like, no, wait, I can do this. It's like kind of like a Heinlein Juvie in the sense that, no, wait, like a kid is doing this. I wonder if I could do this. And then you see her mess up, and yet she doesn't die, and she doesn't completely fail. Spoiler alert, she doesn't completely fail. But she fails a lot along the way. And it's okay. But the other thing that's awesome is from a series building or a world building perspective, it gives us a chance to be like, hey, because this world is a really weird world, and pieces of it have been done in places like Ben Bova's work, Heinlein's work, a little bit of Asimov, though he tends to be further future and higher tech. I could name a bunch of other authors, but most recently, like The Expanse is pretty hard, near term, really popular science fiction that's largely set in our solar system. Ours is the science is a little bit, I think the engineering and science are a little bit more quote unquote realistic. They're a little bit less of a big extrapolation, but still it's in that flavor. But that's a really weird world. And the more realistic you make it, the weirder it gets, and the more the reader's got to be like, what the heck is that? Like, what does that even mean? And starting with Callie at the age she is, if we get to keep going, our readers can learn the future with her. And it's really fun because we can start with like, okay, this is a chunk of stuff, and for later stories you're going to need to know it, but also for this story you need to know it, and this is how it works, at least as far as you need to know it. And isn't it cool? And we can roll that stuff out sequentially. So those are how did I do?
Yeah, pretty much. I like that because she's young, I can explain things through her eyes and knowingly leave out big chunks that I can reveal later and not have the audience feel like they were cheated. Well, if you have a 200-year-old vampire in the body of a high schooler and you have him, not mention key things, then it's like, well, was that malicious? But here it's just, this is the air she's breathing, and so she's not gonna explain in detail, how a microwave works, but she's gonna explain, you turn it on, you put your food in, it's good.
Yeah.
She's got a lot of normal stuff. She's got, well, not that normal. She has siblings who were adopted because of a giant tragedy. So she was raised as an only child, and then abruptly she's got an older brother and a younger brother. But she's got all the sibling interactions that people who have siblings will recognize. And
yes, I did.
Only child.
And she and her brothers are so used to this environment that they're willing to play pranks on each other while they're out in space. Yeah. But also because of the whole disaster, her brothers have, childhood PTSD. A child version of PTSD, but with the way people on the society are, nobody has memorized, the first 144 Pokemon. Instead, they've memorized how to use a 3D printer to build their own spacesuit quickly. And her brothers have not collected, various little electronic things that are part of Minecraft. They have actually built things, and they're all over the place, and that can be useful to her later. And it can be, I don't have to have the eagles coming and save her. I can have things that her brothers did that help.
That make actual sense within
Yes.
the context of the story.
Yeah. Well, and so one of the things that I loved about your character and the way you were able to sort of manipulate the world around her through her eyes was she goes through some really tough kind of life realizations that we all have hit at some point where we're like, oh, I can't necessarily trust the adults in my life, or things are very much happening outside of my realm of understanding. And when you first get the little glimpse of that, it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
When she is going through some of those things that are like very normal coming of age kinds of situations, right? That I thought was really, really well done, because I remember having those moments when I was a kid and going, oh, there are things here that I don't totally understand and I'm a little nervous about it. And then the way she's just like, it's cool, I got it, I'm going to take this into my own hands. Is she based off of anyone in particular, or are there like pieces of little Joelle in Callie?
She's an amalgam of people I've known that I use to try to make sure that she could be real by thinking about how people I've known would really have dealt with that kind of situation. She's not a direct, a self-insert or this one person from boarding school or anything like that.
There is one piece of self-insert. There's one,
that?
not for you, but for me. Callie loves spaceships.
Oh, yeah.
Callie's love of spaceships and her desire to serve on them and to work on them and be on them that's me. Right? That is a piece of me. And but the purpose of doing that from a storytelling perspective is because for the environments and the world building and the setting, we need a viewpoint character who it's plausible later on when they do have to explain some of this stuff. It makes sense for her to know it. In this case, as a 12-year-old.
Yeah. I think readers are really going to latch onto that because she is so obviously passionate. And it was like you were saying, when you were young, if you had read this, be like, oh, this is a kid doing it. You are going to take all of those readers, no matter how old they are, who have this passion and like the whole I was born too late to explore Earth and too early to explore space kind of concept. Yeah. You're letting people experience that in a way that we really only can through books right now. So
yeah, but maybe soon. I don't know. Saturn's going to be a minute.
Yeah,
probably Mars first. Well, maybe back to the moon. Back to the moon before Mars. We'll see.
Moon and Mars. I think probably in that order. Maybe not.
Is that the official bet? It's going on record. This is going to be on the internet, so it's there forever.
That's what the internet says, and I think that's what NASA said. And I think that's what the Congress has said. So, and then
that would be awesome.
It's close.
I would love to see another moon landing because I wasn't around for the first one, so it'd be fun to watch it. And
give it time. It's on the books.
Yeah, in real time.
I forget the exact date, but it is on the books.
All right. I know I missed there was Northern Lights last night in a lot of places in the country, and I missed those. So
I woke up to photos from various people and it's like, no, I didn't know to get up. I was up nursing. I could have.
Right.
I could have gone.
I didn't know to open the window.
I got blackout curtains.
My embarrassment is that I did not notice until this morning. I completely blanked on all my astronomy websites and that stuff. And I was just like, oh, yeah, oops. Forgot about that. Somebody told me like 2 weeks ago.
And my social media algorithms are like out to get me. I got notifications from things that were posted yesterday saying, hey, remember to go look tonight. It's like, no, I needed it then.
Right. Thanks, Facebook.
Yeah.
Could have done some good in the world. I totally understand. Okay, so without spoilers, what was your favorite scene to write? I guess you could spoil it if you want, but go read the book, everyone.
I really my most favorite is the conclusion, but I'm gonna talk about my second favorite, which was the opening scene. We went back and forth over that so many times, but the way it ended up, just I'm very proud of how it worked out. And
what was the most fun about it?
Chameleon is my favorite little character.
Pets in space.
I actually wrote that note, and that was going to be my next question was pets in space. What, I don't know how much you want to talk about it, but there's the whole thing where the younger brother has like a menagerie of
Yes.
animals, right? And you said when you had to sum this up on another podcast in just a couple of words, you went straight to pets in space. So what's your quick summary of the book?
The question was give a 5-word or less teaser for the novel Ringer, and I completely blanked during the podcast. They didn't mention ahead of time that I was going to need to do that. It was just a spontaneous question because I'd done a 5-word teaser for something else, and they thought, well, surely I can do this.
Surely she does this all the time.
Maybe would be reasonable, but no. And so, but then of course, once it was over, I came up with the idea that my 5-word teaser for Ringer is that it's not the chameleon's fault.
But it could be. So now everyone has to go find out.
Yeah.
He tried to fix it.
Yeah. And
It was unfortunate circumstances.
Yeah.
Wrong place, wrong time.
One of the first person challenges is at the same time as the conclusion is happening and awesome stuff is happening with the main character, I know, but it's not in the book, about awesome stuff happening with a couple other characters, and maybe I'll have time before the mass market paperback comes out. That other stuff that's happening that involves the chameleon would be a great short story to provide for people to read this short story and then go buy mass market if you haven't yet. Or, maybe you want to have a complete collection. You can have the ebook, the mass market, the trade paperback, and then the audio when we get that
The
one.
audio. Yeah.
I think we should buy everything.
We were shameless. We are so shameless.
No.
Yeah.
My favorite part about Pets in Space is at kind of at the world building level is, this isn't a huge spoiler, but it's Chalwa Station, the station that our main character lives on, is by modern standards huge. It's big enough to rotate to make its own gravity, so it feels like you're on
spin
Earth.
gravity.
Yeah, spin gravity, not artificial gravity like in higher fantasy, higher tech sci-fi. But also, it's like we talked about, like, where do you get your food? And they got farms. Astronauts just, I think, a couple years ago ate the first lettuce ever grown in space. The first thing ever grown in space, somebody ate. Like, they ate it, they grew it, germinated on orbit, and then they made a salad out of it. And I think one of the things that you see in a lot of hard kind of sci-fi that talks about space exploration, it seems like a very antiseptic universe, and it's like a Homo sapiens only club, and sort of all the people who love nature and taking walks in the woods and animals and pets. It's like, nope, there's none of that. It's just humans and maybe a fish. And it's like, no, dude. Nobody think, like, the serious people that I know who are seriously talking about settling in space. They're like, no, man, we're bringing them we're bringing the farm. Everybody's coming. I don't quite yet have O'Neill's space station designs for how we'd bring the whales and the dolphins, but I love whales and dolphins, and that's in the back of my head. And I think if people talk about making life multiplanetary, I don't think that just means Homo sapiens. I think we're gonna bring a lot of our furry friends and neighbors along with us. I think it's going to be interesting to see how that works. It's going to be really hard. It's going to be complicated. We're going to learn more about ecology than we know now, and we're not going to be able to do things the way they do them on Earth. But that's for me why I love the pets. It's like, yeah, no, they're going to be there.
I loved it. It actually made me think of the more recent Fallout series that Amazon did, because they're building the bunkers, and they're like, oh, there's no pets allowed in the vaults, and the little girl has her dog in the beginning, and I thought it added a great human aspect, and then all of the obvious complexity, like, oh, these are allowed and these ones aren't. How did he even get a chameleon?
Yeah.
She actually knows the answer to that question, but that would be one of those other stories.
Yeah. So you have what you're considering book 0. You've got this one. You've got a couple of short stories. You want to show us what all you have in the universe?
So, Dive Snake Launcher is book 0. Ringer is book 1. And
those covers are so pretty.
I'd like to have at least a book 2 or 3 for following Ringer, but it will depend on, we've got kids to support, so you guys decide.
Yeah, the powers that be.
And I've got short stories in the same story world that are in Chicks in Tank Tops and Dancing.
Oh, cool. Okay, I didn't know you had one on Chicks in Tank Tops. That's awesome.
The Chicks, I'm trying to remember what my title was.
Are they characters that we'll recognize, or are they tangential?
No, they are different characters.
Okay.
I don't remember the title either.
Barbie and Gatorkin versus the Hurricane.
There we go.
And Chicks. Because I like to put humor in my stories anyway, but I took it to like level 15 for Chicks, because that's how I feel like a proper Chicks story should be written. And then,
I agree. I think it's great.
Let's see, Dancing with Destruction, the story was to win the final Lizard War.
So I love, if you want to,
about the same, a little bit after the conclusion of the Dobre Snake Launcher.
Okay, and that's the picture prompt anthology, right?
Yes.
So you know, hold that up again.
Where every single story is a cover art story.
Yeah, so that's extra impressive that you would then able to make it in universe for yourself and take the photo that they gave you.
It required some doing.
Yeah.
It does help a little bit that I had a schizophrenic character.
You can see
that's fascinating. I actually have that on my shelf. I'm gonna have to go pick that up and read it, because I haven't read that out there yet. Huh. All right. I've got more homework.
Comment about to win the final Lizard War. My older brother, who has passed, had schizophrenia, and because of knowing someone personally who had schizoaffective disorder, and it was very bad for him, but through him I met people who had it a whole lot worse. And then seeing in science fiction and fantasy a common situation where somebody has schizophrenia, but actually they don't really have schizophrenia, they're the only one who knows the truth, and the rest of us are blind to the reality. It's kind of annoying, because there are people out there who have to deal with that their senses can't be trusted. And so choosing to write a character who has real schizophrenia, also it's a science fiction world, and he's seeing things that aren't real, but he's still a hero, and making good use of the madness. And so I was quite pleased to be able to pull that one off. And
to do realistic representation.
Jason Cordova, because it took a few back and forths to make it work, to have an editor's feedback of, all right, we're confusing the reader too much. We need to pick one thing and polish it up. And
she doesn't like writing easy stories. This is a thing you'll learn about Joelle if you read. Like, she doesn't like the easy stories. Let's do let's The Expanse with no aliens, but harder and closer term, and then let's make it a juvie.
Yeah.
Those are the conversations we have around the dinner table.
Well, I imagine that most of the readers for Ringer are going to be adults, but for Dobre Snake Launcher, which has almost all adult characters, I was surprised with how many teen and even like 10 to 12-year-olds read it, and that I heard from their parents about how they liked it and stuff. And so one of the things that I made sure to do with Ringer is it wasn't going to have explicit content anyway, but I made sure to also keep the vocabulary to not have profanity in it, because that's feedback I got from people who read the Dobre Snake Launcher, that I had characters speak the way characters would have spoken. And they're on an engineering project, and I've been on engineering projects, and I get how salty people talk.
Yeah. I'm tired.
But on Ringer, that's a main character who's younger, so I can have people choose to not speak that way in front of the main character, and I can also choose to describe it as profanity without actually writing the profanity out.
But if we ever have to do a Space Navy story, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how we do that. Because swearing like a sailor is a real thing.
Yeah. I mean, I know plenty of writers that swear like sailors, so
Or
I sympathize, yeah. Okay, looping back really quickly to you talking about your story and Dancing with Destruction. You also touch a little bit on like real human mental illness in this book as well. I don't know if you want to go into that, but I thought that was a really poignant representation because I've had family members who have suffered with dementia and Alzheimer's and certain things.
There's research into Alzheimer's and the various dementias, and that's one of the things in medicine that we really don't understand very well. I have a general speculative idea that as humans start living longer and being fit and capable longer, instead of just having, right now in general, people live longer than we did like 100 years ago, but we're not as spry near the end as people were near their end when they died sooner. So if people, let's say people on average lived to 60 100 years ago, but they were pretty much walking around as capable in their 60s as they were in their 50s. And now if you know somebody who lives to 100, they probably have a walker or a wheelchair, and they've been in that for a while. But I imagine by about Ringer time frame, maybe people live to 130, and they're pretty spry through their hundreds. That probably there's things that go wrong with people after 100 that we don't really know about, because there's just not that many people who live beyond 100. And it seems to me that dementias are a likely thing that would be much more of an issue culturally when you have people who can be out and about and so can look like they should be in charge and have been in charge since they were, in their 40s or 30s. And maybe we need a process culturally to take people out of being in charge. Though I admit, having lived through the pandemic and starting to wonder if the average age of senators being as old as it was made them make choices that were based on what is best for people in their 80s for a disease that is very dangerous to them and not very dangerous to the public. And that it might be helpful if right now we had sort of a clause where we, test people to make sure that when you're at a certain age, you're really able to be making the big decisions, and that you're not, a congressperson who is not showed up for votes in a year and a half, and actually it's because you're in a dementia ward. Things like that. You can't do that when you're in charge of a space station and have the space station remain safe and operational.
Well, and we've all done the thing where we see someone driving and we're like, you should not be on the road. But that's a very controversial opinion.
That can apply to young people too.
Yeah, that's true. But that's a whole underlying theme in the book too, is like competency and maturity testing, right? Yeah.
Sometimes the safest place to be is find the oldest driver on the road. They'll be driving 5 miles per hour slower than everybody else. Just get behind them. At least you'll arrive. If you're behind them, they're less likely to hit you.
There's that too.
The person in front of you.
There's also.
All right. Thank you guys both so much for your time. This has been a blast for me. I love the book. Joelle, final words on the book. Anything else that you really want people to know about, that you're super excited for them to read?
I'm running out of things.
All right. No worries.
Go check in on the great-great-great-grandchildren.
Yeah, this is the favorite thing I've written so far. And, you don't get to have favorites for children, but you definitely get to have favorites for books. And so try it out and see what you think.
I guess I only have one kid, so I don't.
So you have one favorite.
You're allowed to.
I have one favorite forever. Excellent. Okay, so you have done a couple of podcasts about this already. Where can people go look up those interviews if they want to go watch and learn more?
Okay, so I did one with Feral Ladies, and I'm on Facebook and Twitter where I'm most active. And so I always share those things. So if you go to my Facebook page or you go to my Twitter feed and you click on media, you'll be able to see those things. They're on YouTube. See, Chris Weaves is
Starfleet Tactical with Aries Studios on YouTube. So Starfleet Tactical, the episode number, you can just Google Starfleet Tactical Ringer and you'll get it.
And Blasters and Blades.
Yeah.
They were kind enough to record a podcast like a while in advance, and so it came out right as the book was releasing, which was nice.
And if some of your questions are about like what would it be like to live there, kind of more about the world building and the underlying sort of tech and space stuff, I think there will be on the Bain website for free an article we wrote to sort of go into some of those details that don't fit in the story. But we know people like that stuff. So we do try to find a way to get that out there. That's not quite up yet. It should be up soon.
November 15th is, I think, when that's going to go live.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And also for other people who like text-based stuff, Paul Semel, SEMEL,
That's right.
paulsemel.com has an interview he did with me for Ringer.
Oh,
awesome.
For tech stuff too. If you're interested in just the setting itself, we did an article on the technology from Dabere. The previous book is on there as well. It's
on Bain.com.
On Bain.com.
That's so thorough. I love it. Okay, I'm going to have to go look this up. And by the time this podcast released, the article, if it goes up on the 15th, should be live. So everyone go look for that also.
Wonderful.
Where are you in the real world? Do you have any conventions or anything else coming up in the nearish future that people can keep an eye out for you?
Yes. The next thing that I plan to be a pro at is LibertyCon. But this man right here has his first guest of honor appearance at FenCon in Texas. And I drew a blank on this.
February,
I think late February.
Late February. I know the city, but I just blanked on the name. Sorry, FenCon.
DFW?
Yeah.
DFW Airport, so that means Dallas, right?
I think it means near Dallas.
And I plan to go with him, so I will be a supporting cast member, but also get to hang out with people if anybody wants to chat and talk, because I will not have to be on the programming, and we can come and heckle Andy.
So everyone go to FenCon, bring your copies of Ringer, and Joelle will sign them.
That works.
Also true.
Do that. Awesome. Okay, so we have that in the books. Go check them out. It came out on November 4th, so you can find it wherever books are available. Bain also has their DRM-free ebooks online. So go get that. Read Joelle's books. Thank you guys so much again. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Best of luck.
Thank you. Later, all.
And now, as promised, one jump ahead. John Moore is a nanotech-enhanced soldier of fortune. Lobo is an AI, a living weapons and intelligence platform of enormous destructive potential. Two very dangerous wolves in a galaxy of deadly corporate and paramilitary predators. But Moore has grown weary of the killing, and just once he'd like to finish the job without leaving a trail of blood behind him. Not going to happen. Not on a pristine planet called Macon, where two gigantic corporations vie for control of the local jump gate and access to the riches of an undeveloped world. Dealing with a kidnapping and extortion scheme is only the beginning for Moore and Lobo as they work to stay one jump ahead.
He was married, one female spouse and one male, and he had one child, a girl, but both his spouses and his daughter were vacationing off-planet at unidentified locations. He lived on Landkin, probably relatively near the corporate headquarters in Beaconsdeal, but no address was available. If he ever played a net game, placed an illegal bet, paid for sex, slummed at any of the local bars, or otherwise availed himself of the city's baser pleasures, I could find no trace of it. All the data I encountered painted a portrait of a standard executive pillar of the community, all blemishes long since removed by Zycheck cleaners. The news on Osterlad's death was minimal and, I was pleased to see, completely false. A freak onboard power glitch had fried all the electrical systems, including the emergency beacons, and then ignited a fire that sank the boat. Tragically, Mr. Osterlad, a local businessman specializing in heavy machinery for frontier world development, had perished aboard the ship he loved so much after expending his last bit of energy helping his crew into floats. The story wouldn't stand up if anyone bothered to rip into it, but no one would unless company officials asked for FC intervention, and I was sure they wouldn't. So at worst, Osterlad's successors, along with Chung and Zaitchik, of course, would be coming after me. Both groups drew their motivation from the same source, Chung. So getting to him remained the key next step if I wanted to return my life to normal. With Osterlad, I had to assume there was no chance he would risk coming to me. With Chung, I had a small chance that he didn't know about Lobo's repair, so perhaps I could bait him into a meeting. It was worth a try. A few streets down Dean's Folly from the Busted Heart, I found what I wanted. An ex-U-Call franchise still in the comm business. For about half the price of what you'd pay outside Queen's Bar, the wire-thin proprietor of this fine establishment would slide you a communicator that'd work until its bill hit the real owner, by which time you'd better be highly inaccessible. For 4 times the price of a comm unit on the outside, however, he'd slip you a clean box with a spider-shaped viral injector hunched on its back. The injector disabled the display, altered your voice, and spread billable microseconds onto other phones and calls across the net. The time additions so small that no one who was not running his own verification software would notice them. As long as the spider glowed green, the call remained secure. The software in the spiders ran a constant race with the CommNet software, so the units were never good for long. When a spider detected an attack or a compromise, or when it was unable to find recipients for the microsecond billing allocations, it turned red. This level of protection was fine by me. I needed it to last only 1 call. I took the device to the Busted Heart, paid the occupants of a table in the corner of the rearmost room to leave, and contacted Zaitchik. The bar rumbled with noise, as always, but with the earbuds, I could hear the call well enough for my purpose and still monitor the area for signs of trouble. Even if Zaitchik's tracers beat the spider's software, I'd have at least a few minutes before corporate muscle could get to the bar. I explained to the inquisitive answer construct that my comms camera was busted and asked for Chung. I was rewarded with a female voice so perfectly modulated that I momentarily longed to meet its owner, which was probably a piece of software. "Mr. Chung's office?" It said. "May I help you?" "I'd like to speak to Mr. Chung," I said. "As I'm sure you can appreciate." I decided to indulge my fantasy and think of the voice, a delicious one that dripped sex as belonging to a woman, said, "Mr. Chung receives a great many communications, so he asks us to handle them if we can. May I perhaps help you?" No. The spider wouldn't protect the call long enough for me to be able to afford to waste time playing games with Zaitchik's flack-catching programs. Please tell Mr. Chung that it concerns the return of Jasmine to Kelko's Slake on Mackin. I was banking on the notion that the 4 keywords I'd tossed out would elevate the priority of my message a great deal. In case I was wrong, I decided to appeal to self-preservation as well. I suggest you flash him the info, because if you don't, when he finally sees this call log and finds out what he missed, he's likely to throw you out. "Please hold," she said, and what I read is both a good sign and a sure indicator that traceback software was now seeking me. About 90 seconds later, a man's voice blasted into my ears. "Who is this? And what do you want?" The words sounded enough like the recordings of Chung I had heard that it was either the man himself or a construct customized for him. "My identity isn't important right now," I said. "Suffice to say that I was involved in returning Jasmine to Slake on Kelko, and we need to talk." "You were what?" He was screaming into the phone.
This has been the Bane Free Radio Hour. Thanks for joining us at the heart of science fiction. Join us next week as Griffin Barber interviews Bane cover artists Sam Kennedy, Dan Dos Santos, and Pierluigi Abbondanza about their work and inspiration. Plus, Part 39 of the serialization of One Jump Ahead by Mark L. Van Name. Score by Ruth Judkowitz.